Hello, everyone. I'm Lucy Letterhandler, the curator at the Art Gallery of Southwestern Manitoba. And thank you all for being here this evening for a Vernacular Spotlight. The AGSM is really committed to supporting artists from Brandon and the Westman region. And so it is my pleasure to introduce Gerry Oliver. Gerry Oliver is a self educated artist living near Carberry, Manitoba. Most of her art is representational of her life on the farm, of which she likes to include themes of flora and fauna of the native prairie. This has been one of her biggest inspirations and passions since moving here from Ottawa, Ontario. She works mostly in mediums of fiber, paint, and pencil. Her work has been shown across the prairies in both public and private galleries from Alberta to Manitoba. Her work is also housed in both private and public collections. Gerry has won several awards for her watercolor work, and as part of her art education, she's mentored with Diana Thornycroft, Agatha Dyke, Shirley Brown, Faye Jelly, and Barb Flemington. Please enjoy this video now, made by Javin Hardinge, Ty Evancio Dandridge, and Kevin Conlon.
Gerry Oliver. I am an artist and a farmer, and I live near Brandon, but I find that this art thing has gone on all my life. I tend to drift towards more natural type subject matter, but most often these days, it's what's living in my backyard that I focus on. My sheep, my dogs, my cats, my llamas, what else is out there? My dogs. So everybody is part of my art practice these days. I'm going to work with watercolor and colored pencil. Those are the two mediums that I like to work with. I'm finding it's more versatile than I ever imagined. So I try to utilize the paint more as the underpainting and then the pencils on top. And I can add the detail, which I like to include in my pieces. So the materials that I like to use, particularly the paper is the most important, I find, because like Stonehenge paper is what I like to use. It's a printmaking paper it's softer. It has a bit of give to it, and it takes some water as well as the pencils really well. The pencils that I use, primarily Prismacolor, but also some of the other Caran d'Ache, Derwent. Those are the sorts of pencils that I like to use. Erasers are obviously fairly important with this. I find these pencil-like erasers really work well for this kind of work. It allows me to lift out things. I can work in much more closer detail. I use a paquet brush to take the shavings from the pencils off the paper without smearing. So that's the other thing I use. So I find with this kind of work, the types of materials are very minimal for that. So it's not it's not expensive to do this kind of stuff, and it goes along pretty easily after that. I always use my color wheel to help me decide on what colors I'm going to use and color combinations. And so that's usually what I do when I start. I look at my reference photo, what are the dominant colors in it, and then I go to my color wheel, what's going to work with that. I ended up spending quite a bit of time out in the countryside with people who owned horses. So that kind of got me to the point where I thought, yeah, that's the kind of life I want to live. So I married a farmer and ended up out in Manitoba. So that was how that happened. The sheep were an afterthought. We bought some land that had a bunch of pasture on it, and we thought, what are we going to do with all of this pasture land? We didn't want to get cows, so we thought, oh, well, let's try some sheep. None of us had any experience with sheep, but we just decided that might be a good way to utilize the land, and so we got a dozen sheep. And then, as does happen, a dozen became 25. The adage about doing art about the things that you know best is kind of true, for me anyways. I work with these creatures every day. I'm there from their conception to their birth and beyond. And I know every little bit of them. And so that familiarity with it helps me put something extra into these. It's not just what they look like, it's their personality and their behavior, all those things. I'm so in tune with it that I can put that into my images. They're very much a part of my life. So the work, I guess, shows that. When I'm coloring layers, I like to do dark to light. The white pencil will cover the darker colors and show up a lot better. So I usually start with the darker colors and work lighter. For the wool, and because I'm quite familiar with lamb wool, I know that it's tight little ringlets. So that's how I draw them in. And you start, all the layers are light. You don't press hard on these. With the colored pencil, the more you press on the paper, you're compacting it down, and so the tooth of the paper starts to disappear. So you don't want to put heavy pressure on it too quickly, otherwise the pencil basically will not stick. On adult sheep, the wool is different, so you don't have these little ringlet type texture. It's quite different, and oftentimes I take a reference photo just of the wool so that I can see close up what it looks like, because I have several different breeds of sheep. Some have long curly locks, and other ones short wool. It's very tightly packed in there. That it looks different, so I usually try to keep references just to make sure that I get it right. Probably end up going over this a few times to get it darker, and then I'll use alcohol to dissolve the wax in the pencil so that I can get a smoother finish. When I come to areas that would be considered black, you would be thinking of using black color. I prefer not to use black. I prefer to mix colors to make a very dark color instead. I find black sucks the energy out of the surrounding colors, creates kind of a black hole, so to speak, and and demands attention. With the pencil, I can put layer upon layer upon layer, and each layer will darken that spot. So if I wanted this to be very black, I could put a dark green on top of it, or a different dark purple, or a very dark red, something like that. By adding all those layers on top of each other, it intensifies and makes it darker. This is a much more lively color. Plus, it also speaks to the other areas that I have those colors in as well. So preferably not using a pure black color. It continues to make the picture more unified and a little bit more interesting, I would say. The details, I try to focus the most detail around the face. That's the most important. This area here, you want to give an impression, but it's the face that's most important, especially the eye. So that's how I try to have everything kind of focus in on the face. I find when I'm looking at these images, I work every day with these animals, and you become so intimate with them, their life. And I'm not just talking about the sheep, because I have dogs and llamas that guard the sheep, and all of those animals, you see so much about them on a day-to-day basis. And when I bring that to the paper, it's, I don't know, it's hard to describe. It's just it's just bringing them one step closer for me.
Wasn't that great? I loved, in particular, all of the experimentation that brought her skills up to that level, and what she says at the end about how making a portrait of an animal really increases the intimacy of that relationship between her and her animals. Gerry, if you're online right now and there's a way for us to keep up with your work, maybe you could write that in the comments, because I know that I would love to. So with that, thank you all for coming. This tour will be posted on Facebook. Feel free to share it among all your friends. Our next event is a tour of the Humor and Playfulness Room on Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And then on Thursday, February 4th, I'll be talking about the wonderful award-winning artist, Diana Thornycroft, at 2 p.m. So I hope to see you all there. And I thank you all so much for coming. I hope you have a great night.